Tonight's sleep story takes us to a small workshop by the sea, where golden light falls softly through tall windows onto wooden tables. In English, conscientious means careful and thorough, paying close attention to doing something well. It describes work done with care, objects treated with respect, or the gentle effort to do things properly. A conscientious gardener tends each plant. A conscientious letter is written with thought. And sometimes we see conscientiousness in the way someone arranges a table or mends a torn page. Tonight, we meet a watchmaker whose days unfold with this same quiet attention. Welcome to English Through Stories. As you rest tonight, the word conscientious will appear throughout this story, repeated gently and naturally, so you can learn its meaning through context and calm. Let your breath soften just a little. Feel your shoulders release the weight of the day. Let the quiet around you settle into your body, and allow a sense of calm to drift in as the story begins. The watchmaker's shop stood on a narrow street near the harbour, where the morning sun arrived early and stayed late. Inside, everything had its place. Tools rested in velvet-lined drawers. Small brass wheels sat in labelled wooden boxes. A magnifying glass hung from a brass arm above the workbench, catching the light. The watchmaker was a conscientious man, and his workspace reflected this. Each evening before closing, he would clean each tool, return each screw to its proper container, and wipe the glass surfaces until they gleamed. This morning, he arrived as the first boats left the harbour. He unlocked the door, pushed back the green shutters, and let the cool air drift through the shop. Light spilled across the wooden floor in golden rectangles. He filled the kettle and set it on the small stove in the corner, then walked to his workbench and sat down. A pocket watch lay waiting for him, its case open, its delicate interior exposed like the inside of a flower. The watchmaker was conscientious in his approach to every repair. He never rushed. He began by examining the watch under the magnifying glass, noting where dust had gathered, where oil had dried, where a tiny gear had slipped from its proper alignment. He wrote these observations in a leather notebook, his handwriting small and precise. Then he selected his tools, one by one, laying them out in the order he would need them. A pair of tweezers, a tiny screwdriver, a soft brush, a cloth for polishing. The kettle whistled softly. He rose, made tea in a ceramic cup, and returned to the bench. Steam curled upward in the morning light. Outside, footsteps passed on the cobblestones. A gull called from somewhere near the water. The watchmaker sipped his tea and looked at the watch before him, feeling no urgency, only the gentle pull of the work itself. He began with the smallest parts first. Using the tweezers, he lifted a gear no larger than a grain of rice and held it to the light. Dust clung to its teeth. With a soft brush, he cleaned it, his movements slow and conscientious, making sure each tooth was clear. Then he dipped the gear in a shallow dish of cleaning solution, swirled it gently, and set it on a white cloth to dry. This process repeated for each piece: one gear, one spring, one jewel bearing. The watchmaker's hands moved steadily, without hesitation, but also without haste. He had learned long ago that conscientious work could not be hurried. A watch was a universe of small dependencies. One misplaced screw, one droplet too much of oil, and time itself would falter. As he worked, the morning deepened. The light shifted from pale gold to warmer amber. Through the window, He could see people walking to the market, carrying baskets, greeting neighbors. The sounds of the street were distant and soft, like music heard from another room. The watchmaker did not look up often. His attention remained on the watch, on the intricate dance of metal and motion that would, when reassembled, measure the hours and minutes of someone's life. He thought about the person who had brought this watch to him, an elderly woman with kind eyes and a worn coat. She had placed the watch on his counter and said it had belonged to her father. It no longer kept time, she explained, but she hoped it could be saved. The watchmaker had promised to do his best, and his best, he knew, required conscientiousness. It required patience, care, and respect for what the watch represented. Not just mechanics, but memory. By midday, every part lay clean and sorted on the white cloth. The watchmaker stood, stretched his back, and walked to the window. The harbor glittered under the high sun. Boats rocked gently at their moorings. He felt a quiet satisfaction, the kind that comes from work done with attention and care. After a simple lunch of bread and cheese, the watchmaker returned to his bench. Now came the conscientious work of reassembly. He consulted his notebook, reviewing the order of the parts. Then, with the tweezers, he began to place each piece back into the watch's frame. The balance wheel went first, settling into its tiny cradle, then the hairspring, so delicate it seemed to float. The watchmaker's breathing slowed as he worked. Each placement required precision. A gear positioned even slightly askew would bind against its neighbor. A spring wound too tightly would snap. He moved with the conscientiousness of someone who understood that small things mattered greatly. As the watch began to take shape again, its complexity revealed itself. Wheels nested within wheels, springs coiled in perfect spirals. Jeweled bearings gleamed like tiny rubies in the light. The watchmaker applied oil with a needle-thin applicator, just one droplet at the precise point where metal met metal. Too much would gum the mechanism, too little would cause wear. His hands knew the measure without thinking. Outside, the afternoon unfolded. Clouds passed overhead, their shadows sliding across the shop floor. The watchmaker heard children laughing somewhere nearby, the clatter of a cart on the cobblestones, the distant sound of a church bell. But these sounds did not distract him. His focus remained conscientious and complete. He tightened screws with a jeweler's screwdriver, feeling the moment when metal gripped metal securely. He tested each wheel, spinning it gently with the tip of his tweezers to ensure it moved freely. He checked alignments with the magnifying glass, his eye patient and thorough. Hours passed, but he did not notice. Time, for the watchmaker, existed differently when he was immersed in his craft. By late afternoon, the watch was nearly whole again. Only the final adjustments remained. The watchmaker wound the mainspring carefully, feeling the tension build. He listened to the first tick, then the second. The sound was soft and steady, like a heartbeat. He smiled. The watch lived again. But the conscientious watchmaker did not declare the work finished. A watch that ticked was not necessarily a watch that kept true time. He set the repaired watch on a special stand and placed it beside a master clock, a large and reliable timepiece that stood on a shelf above his workbench. Then he returned to his chair and waited. This was the part of the work that required a different kind of conscientiousness, the willingness to observe, to be patient, to let time itself reveal the truth. He watched the second hand of the repaired watch sweep around its dial. He compared it to the master clock. For the first hour, the watches matched, but the conscientious watchmaker knew that 1 hour proved nothing. He made more tea. He tidied his workspace, returning tools to their drawers, wiping surfaces, sweeping the floor. The shop grew quieter as the afternoon aged into evening. Fewer people passed on the street. The light softened, turning golden, then amber, then the pale violet of dusk. Still, the watchmaker observed the 2 timepieces. He made notes in his book, recording the position of the second hand every 15 minutes. This was the conscientious discipline of his craft. Attention sustained over time, care extended beyond the moment of apparent completion. As the sun set, he lit a lamp on his workbench. Its warm glow made the brass tools gleam. The watch continued to tick, steady and sure. 3 hours had passed, and it had not gained or lost a single second. The watchmaker allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The work had been good. The repair was sound. But even now, his conscientiousness did not waver. He would let the watch run overnight. He would check it again in the morning. Only then, after a full cycle of hours in darkness and in light, would he return the watch to its owner. The watchmaker closed the shutters, but did not lock the shop. He walked to a small back room where a cot, a table, and a single chair sat beneath a window overlooking a narrow courtyard. He lived simply. His needs were few. A shelf held books about horology, the science of timekeeping. A hook on the wall held his coat. A basin and pitcher stood ready for washing. He prepared a simple dinner and ate slowly, chewing thoughtfully, tasting the food. This too was a kind of conscientiousness, the care he brought to even the smallest rituals of his day. After eating, he washed his dishes and set them to dry on a wooden rack. Then he returned to the workshop. The lamp still burned on the workbench. The 2 clocks, the master and the repaired watch, ticked in quiet harmony. The watchmaker sat and listened. In the stillness, the ticking seemed louder, clearer, a gentle rhythm that measured the passing of moments. He thought about time, how invisible it was, how easily taken for granted, and yet how precious. His work, he knew, was not grand. He did not build cathedrals or paint masterpieces, but he believed that conscientious attention to small things had its own value. A watch that kept true time helped someone arrive when they needed to arrive, kept a promise, caught a train, remembered an anniversary. In this way, his work touched lives, quietly and without fanfare. He picked up a book from the shelf and read for a while, letting the words settle into his mind. The author wrote about the history of clockmaking, about monks in medieval towers who built the first mechanical clocks, their work driven by a conscientious desire to mark the hours of prayer. The watchmaker felt a kinship with those long-ago craftsmen, separated by centuries, but united by the same careful spirit. Outside, the street had grown silent. Night deepened over the harbor. Stars appeared in the sky above the rooftops. The watchmaker closed his book and sat quietly, hands folded in his lap, grateful for the day's work and for the stillness that now surrounded him. The watchmaker woke with the dawn, as he always did. He washed his face in cool water, dressed in his usual clothes, a simple shirt, dark trousers, a worn but clean apron, and walked to the workshop. The lamp had burned out during the night, but morning light now filled the space. He went directly to the workbench. The master clock read 6:15. The repaired watch read 6:15. Not a second's difference. The watchmaker allowed himself a full smile this time. The work had been successful. His conscientious efforts had restored the watch to accuracy. He polished the watch's case with a soft cloth until it shone. He wound it one more time, gently, and listened again to its steady ticking. Then he placed it in a small, velvet-lined box and set the box on the counter near the front door. At 9 o'clock, as he had arranged, the elderly woman returned. She entered the shop slowly, leaning on a wooden cane, her eyes searching for the watchmaker. When she saw him, she smiled, hopeful and anxious at once. "I've finished the repair," the watchmaker said gently. He opened the velvet box and lifted out the watch. "It keeps perfect time now." The woman's eyes filled with tears. She took the watch in her hands, cradling it as if it was something alive. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for your care." The watchmaker felt the quiet reward of conscientious work, the knowledge that his attention and patience had mattered. He named a modest price, far less than the hours warranted. The woman paid, pressing the coins into his hand, and then she was gone, the watch reunited with its keeper. The watchmaker returned to his bench. Already other watches waited for him. A wristwatch with a cracked crystal, a mantle clock that chimed at the wrong hours, a pocket watch whose hands had frozen at 3:30. Each one represented a small failure of time, and each one called for the same conscientious approach. He selected the wristwatch first. He examined it under the magnifying glass, noted the crack, the dust beneath the crystal, the faint residue of moisture. He began the process again, disassembly, cleaning, repair, each step undertaken with the same care as the day before and the day before that. The sun climbed higher. Light moved across the floor. The harbor came alive with activity. Fishermen mending nets, merchants opening stalls, children running along the waterfront. The watchmaker heard these sounds distantly, as if through water, his mind absorbed by the small world before him. This was his life, and he chose it freely. The conscientious tending of broken things, the patient restoration of order and precision, the quiet satisfaction of work done well, not for applause or recognition, but for its own sake. He thought of the elderly woman now somewhere in the town, perhaps listening to the ticking of her father's watch, and he felt grateful to play even a small part in that continuity. As midday approached, the watchmaker paused. He made tea. He opened the shutters wider to let in more light and air. A breeze drifted through, carrying the scent of salt and seaweed. He stood at the window for a moment, looking out at the world before returning to the bench. The work continued, conscientious and calm, hour by hour, day by day, measured not by grand achievements, but by small acts of attention, care, and quiet devotion to the craft of keeping time. Thank you for listening to English Through Stories. Let the word conscientious stay with you as you rest.